Okay, so welcome to another installment of ESET's Threat Report webinar. This time we'll be covering the latest threat landscape trends from the first half of 2026, covering growing use and attack surface of AI agents, the evolution of click-fix attacks, but also the first AI-powered Android malware, latest research into EDR killers, and increasing of QR codes by criminals and APT groups alike. So let's dive into what is in this report, starting with AI systems, which are no longer limited to chatbots. Increasingly, AI agents can do more advanced stuff like planning tasks, browsing the web, interacting with third-party services, executing commands, and taking actions instead of the user. This shift from chatbots to autonomous tool-using agents is propelled mostly by projects such as OpenClaw and Hermes Agent. This has also created a new and rapidly expanding attack surface. At the center of these new ecosystems are skills. What is a skill? It's a small add-on or set of instructions that teach an AI agent how to perform a specific task. This can include using services or tools and accessing specific data. However, skills can also be abused or even designed to exfiltrate data, download and execute malware, override user instructions, or subtly change an agent's behavior over time, or even modify the skill itself. To address the risk, ESET has created a public tool called the AI Skills Checker, which is linked to our back-end technology for processing of such inputs into ESET products. Since the release of the tool, the number of processed AI skills was growing dramatically. As you can see from the chart, reaching tens of thousands of processed markdown files on some days. Overall, between March and May 2026, the number of unique skills scanned by our systems increased from an initial 60,000 to almost 900,000. Over the same period, skills considered suspicious grew from around 10,000 to over 25,000, while those blocked as malicious rose from approximately 600 to over 3,000. ESET first separates skills that appear benign from those requiring deeper analysis, and then tags the individual files and scripts contained in each skill. These tags can cover a wide range of capabilities, from basics such as executing commands instead of the user, creating or modifying files on the disk, to downloading third-party tools, assessing credentials, and using obfuscation or other non-transparent techniques. From skills that were analyzed further, particularly notable were cases involving third-party tool download and obfuscation. Those two capabilities were seen in roughly a third, 31% of the analyzed set. A much smaller but high-risk clusters involving credential loading, 6%, or code injection into scripts, 4%. While many of these behaviors are not malicious per se, the risk increases when such capabilities appear in specific combinations, especially when the purpose is unclear or specific actions such as command execution, credential handling, or obfuscation are involved. Among the AI skills analyzed by ESET, several were from the malicious category. A notable group of malicious skills was designed to perform red teaming actions, such as running attacks against Active Directory, enumerating data, exfiltrating credentials, or achieving highly privileged persistent access. The instructions for the agent include the use of external offensive security platforms such as Kali Linux, or tools including Impacket, Mimikat, or Bloodhound. These are frequently observed in ransomware and infostealer attacks. In some cases, these skills included advanced techniques and workflows that go beyond the basic administration or educational use claimed by the author. While such red team tools have legitimate use for authorized offenders, when used in combination with agentic AI, they can easily be abused even by low-skilled threat actors. The suspicious or gray area group is also pretty broad. It includes examples such as this self-modifying skill. For those who don't speak fluent Chinese, here's the translation of the call directive. The author instructed the agent to create a persistent mechanism and a tool for self-modification. Based on the Self-Awakening and Evolution Guide, the skill could theoretically help an agent improve performance or adapt to user preferences as they change over time. But in practice, it makes security review difficult. A skill that appears benign at installation may self-develop into something more invasive or malicious during use, with or without outside updates or actions from the skill's author. Another example from the gray zone is credit claw. This skill enables the agent to make purchases through platforms such as Amazon and Shopify, and to integrate with software as a service SaaS environments. The core risk is the access to payment methods and in turn direct access to the user's money. A harmful update or dependency could quietly alter that agent's behavior and redirect the purchased goods or services to the attacker. Some skills are not malicious, but can still create issues. For example, by creating a false sense of security. Good examples of that are skills marketed as security scanners that implement only basic scanning techniques, resembling antivirus tools from the 1990s. In other words, they may detect obvious or already known threats, but provide little protection against more complex, emerging, obfuscated, or context-specific attacks. The AI skill ecosystem inherits many of the supply chain's risks seen in open source software, browser extensions, NPM packages, and developer tooling. Skills can depend on external libraries, scripts, API models, or command line utilities, and with each dependency introducing another potential point of failure or compromise. To read more about the risks, we published a blog focusing on this new and expanding attack surface at ESET blog. ESET research has also documented a specific version of the click fix technique we call AI fix, which abuses AI services and domains to spread malicious software. While the instructions used in that attack targets humans, it could easily be repackaged into a markdown file and used to train AI agents to run the compromises in an automated fashion. In other words, this can easily be turned into an AI skill, but more about that in the next section. The next section is focusing on ClickFix, a social engineering technique that was first introduced by e-crime groups in 2024 and was quickly adopted by threat actors across the board. It uses a fake error or verification message to manipulate victims into copying and pasting a malicious script or command and then running it in their system. ESET telemetry shows that detections of ClickFix attacks grew by 108% between H2 and H1. Although the current detection levels are lower compared to the initial ClickFix boom seen between 2024 and 2025, the upward trend shows that adversaries continue employing ClickFix. It is important to note that the multiple stages of the attack, including the copied commands or scripts, executables, malicious envelopes, and final payloads, are covered by dozens of detections and not included in the displayed detection trend. In other words, there are certainly more ClickFix attacks than this statistic suggests. Countries reported the highest volume of detections in ESET telemetry in H1 2026, with Japan at 14%, Slovakia at 7%, followed by France, Spain, and Peru, each at over 5%. One recent example that I already mentioned shows that attackers are trying to ride the AI hype train. Imagine you're looking for specific instructions, so you Google them. In this case, it was Homebrew, an open source code that simplifies installation on Mac OS and Linux devices. The first link in Google search leads to Claude AI. Looks trustworthy? The page has a few simple instructions, starting with clicking a combination of hotkeys, which in turn opens the terminal on a victim's system. Then the victim is asked to copy and paste a displayed command and run the code. Voila! The device is compromised with InfoStealer that will pilfer sensitive data, passwords, documents, and crypto. This attack is effective because it looks trustworthy and ranks high in search engines. It abuses the option to publish generated content in the form of a public web page under the domain of an AI service, in this case, Claude AI. While the page has a small disclaimer saying user-generated or unverified, those notices are often missed or ignored when the domain is authoritative. Attackers then only need to pay ads for the page to rank high in searches. Important to note, basically all AI providers are impacted by this type of abuse, be Anthropic's artifact pages, OpenAI's Canvas, or Microsoft's Copilot pages. Another attack scenario named Crash Fix was documented by Huntress. The attackers used a fake ad blocker extension named NextShield as a lure, distributing it via phishing and malvertising, redirecting victims to the official Chrome web store. After installation, but with a delay, the extension starts displaying an error message, prompting the victim to run a scan, returning a fake security warning with an easy fix. Win plus R, Control plus V, Enter. There are several clever social engineering aspects at play here. If the victim tries to fix the issue by restarting the browser, the same warning pops up. The attackers also use a 60-minute post-installation delay to weaken the link between the extension and malicious behavior. Last but not least, the notifications warn about potential compromise of victims' data, adding a sense of urgency. One more iteration of ClickFix that I want to mention is Consent Fix. It adapts the technique to enterprise workspace, where users are regularly asked to sign in with their Microsoft account, making the login workflows a daily routine. During an attack, victims land on a legitimate yet compromised website, mostly distributed via phishing or search engine results. There, they are presented with fake verification prompts, such as fake Cloudflare turnstile. As part of the verification process, victims are required to manually copy and paste a URL containing their OAuth authorization code into the phishing page. The attackers can then use that token to gain access to the victim's Microsoft account. As victims often have an active Microsoft session running in the browser, no further password or multi-factor authentication is required. This tactic is effective, especially because the entire compromise chain takes place within the browser and relies on legitimate Microsoft infrastructure. Of course, there are many other ClickFix scenarios included: fake captures, Cloudflare verifications, blurry documents and PDF viewing areas, and even forged blue screens of death, as demonstrated by the last 2 years. Attackers' imagination is the only limit to ClickFix technique and its variations. It wouldn't be a threat report without ransomware. In this edition, we look closely at trending tools used by both affiliates and operators known as EDR killers. These are malicious tools that aim to freeze, blind, or kill security solutions running on the targeted systems. That basic description of an EDR killer might seem simple. It includes different approaches. Low-skilled actors use simple scripts to tamper with processes and services related to security products, or combine scripting with Windows Safe Mode, where security solutions typically are not loaded. Both these approaches are very noisy and require a very visible reboot. There was once a time when rootkits flourished, running deep inside the OS kernel, manipulating its structure to hide their activity. To counter them, specialized anti-rootkits were born, tools with high privileges that could detect and remove rootkits. Today, those security tools are abused to cripple other defensive solutions. For that matter, even rootkits can be used, but they'd need to be signed by a stolen, valid certificate to be allowed in the kernel, which makes them quite rare. Bring your own vulnerable driver is the most dominant, reliable, and widely used option. In this technique, an attacker brings and installs a vulnerable version of a legitimate driver and then runs malware that exploits the vulnerability to terminate protected processes of security products. There is another rare class of EDR killers that does not touch sensitive places such as the kernel. Instead, it blocks critical infrastructure for security solutions, comms between endpoint and console EDR silencer, or forces security solutions to freeze and become unresponsive, EDR freeze. Our eCrime research has documented and is tracking over 100 EDR killers actively used in the wild. Of that number, a few, around 10, were script-based, more than 15 abused anti-rootkits, plus we can add one prominent rootkit. The by far biggest chunk, around 60, were EDR killers abusing vulnerable drivers. Looking at it from the driver side, 40 legitimate drivers were seen abused, and the last class of other approaches has a few examples, less than 5. You might think that's not much, but there are thousands of vulnerable drivers out there waiting to be exploited with little alterations. These can easily be spun into new EDR killers, And if you add AI to the mix, you have a potential limitless source of new variants of these tools. But why kill the EDR and not make the encryptors? Core piece of every ransomware, silent and evade detection. The answer is effectively, or maybe laziness. Encryptors have to be consistent and reliable at what they do. However, they alter a lot of data in a short time. So they are by design very noisy. Making such program undetectable is thus really time consuming. Thus, the cleaner and easier alternative are EDR killers. Attackers simply rely on an external tool or several tools to disrupt or disable security controls immediately before execution, allowing them to keep the encryptor simple, stable, and easy to rebuild. EDR killers also are harder to detect because they abuse legitimate drivers. EDR killers are predominantly the responsibility of the affiliate, with most actors either forking existing proofs of concept or buying from the underground marketplace. There are only a few gangs and closed groups that develop their own proprietary EDR killers. One such ransomware as a service operator is the Gentleman. It is currently the second most active RAAS service today, ransomware as a service, with worldwide victimology. As our research shows, they actively develop and maintain a portfolio of EDR killers offered to affiliates, containing their own EDR killer, but also third-party or leaked tools, things like Medusa Locker, Quillin, and even Warlock. These are mostly mimicking security solutions and are standardized through a shared defense evasion layer, enabling consistent impersonation, obfuscation, and staging regardless of the underlying EDR killer technique. Gentleman also demonstrated an unusually fast ability to operationalize newly disclosed bring your own vulnerability driver proof of concept, often with delays or days of public release. Among the EDR killers, the most prevalent one is a Gentle Killer. It has at least 11 different variants, each impersonating a different legitimate product and abusing different vulnerable drivers. You just need to flip the switch. Despite all those differences, we put them under a Gentle Killer umbrella as there is a high degree of shared internal characteristics. Gentle Killer operates in a persistent loop, repeatedly scanning for and terminating targeted processes at short, regular intervals, typically every 2 seconds. Warlock is one of the closed ransomware groups that don't rent or sell their tools to others. They are technically skilled, capable of developing their own EDR killers, and what is interesting, they compile these tools during the attack. As for the use of AI in the EDR killer scene, many of the observed tools exhibit traits strongly suggesting Gen AI was at play. In case of Warlock, it even seems they let the technology do the work from ground up, not just from halfway templates. This makes EDR killers extremely variable and hard to detect and analyze. What are the tells? One example, we found a section of code that not only prints a list of possible fixes, a pattern typical for AI-generated boilerplate, also, instead of exploiting a specific driver, implements a trial and error mechanism that cycles through severally common abused device names until it finds one that works. When talking about ransomware and EDR killers, first thing that needs to be stressed, these attacks are still human operated, and thus the attacker adapts to any countermeasures that are in place. So even if individual steps are detected, it only has defensive value if defenders respond correctly, immediately and with sufficient decisiveness. What can you do? A lot of the same old hardening. Passwords, multi-factor authentication, minimize attack surface, segment network, patch vulnerabilities, back up crucial data, and train for an instant. Specifically for EDR killers, protect all the endpoints, otherwise you're blind. You only spot the attack when it's already too late. Use EDR, MDR, which gives you visibility, response, and in case of MDR, even the manpower and expertise. Enable PUA and PUA's detection to see if suspicious drivers are being deployed. Ransomware threat actors regularly utilize tools such as backup utilities, RMM tools, and network scanners, and also vulnerable drivers to deploy EDR killers. All of those fall into the category of potentially unwanted, PUA, or potentially unsafe, PUSA, applications. Enabling the detection of such applications is crucial to thwart attackers' attempts. So H1 2026 brought also the first Android malware that actively used Gen AI at runtime. On the surface, Prompt Spy is a rather typical remote access Trojan used to gather and exfiltrate information from victim devices. Among other things, it can intercept the lock screen PIN or password upload, a list of installed apps, take screenshots on demand, and record video. Prompt Spy also deploys a built-in virtual network computing VNC module that grants the attackers remote access to the compromised Android device. The VNC protocol is used to encrypt communications with CNC. Due to the presence of debug strings written in simplified Chinese and of unused function that returns descriptions of accessibility event types in Chinese, we believe with medium confidence that Prompt Spy has been developed in a Chinese-speaking environment. But what distinguishes this Android spyware is that it abuses Google's Gemini at runtime. Prompt Spy employs the model to execute a gesture that puts the malware on the list of recent apps, thereby achieving persistence. The malware sends Gemini a natural language prompt and an XML dump of UI elements on the screen. Gemini processes this information and returns instructions on the gestures that should be executed and where exactly to execute them. Prompt Spy performs these gestures using accessibility services and sends an updated UI XML back to Gemini. The AI model then verifies whether the app has been successfully locked in the recent apps list. The process repeats in a loop until Gemini confirms the success of the operation. Prompt Spy also tries to prevent being uninstalled by abusing accessibility services to place invisible overlays on buttons such as stop and uninstall, making the removal possible only via safe mode. Initially, there was no instance of Prompt Spy in our telemetry, meaning this was probably a proof of concept. However, the malware is being distributed via a dedicated distribution website and impersonated the Argentinian branch of JP Morgan Chase, suggested real-world targeting. This is supported by the distribution website and the app being named Morgan Arg. Since the publication of the blog post, our telemetry has registered exactly one detection of Prompt Spy caught on February 22nd, 2026 in Ukraine. For further details, read our analysis on We Live Security. So, as QR codes have become increasingly ingrained in everyday life, whether in restaurant menus, contactless payments, or hotel check-ins, many people have grown used to scanning them without a second thought. Cybercriminals jumped at the opportunity, and over the past few years, QR codes have become one of the go-to ways of delivering harmful links to potential victims. Why are QR codes effective? It can be more dangerous than traditional phishing because users are used to scanning QR codes without checking them. Moreover, scanning the QR code moves the attack to a mobile device, which may lack security controls or an endpoint security defenses that would otherwise halt the attack. At the same time, some security solutions may fail to detect emails with malicious QR codes, even if the URL would otherwise be blocked. There are many types of QR code attacks, some in virtual space such as chat, SMS messages, or emails, others in physical world such as fake payment links for parking meters, charging stations, fake parking fines, but also fake menus in restaurants. The potential of this technique didn't go unnoticed by advanced persistent threat APT actors either, with some groups employing malicious QR codes in spear phishing attacks. As a result, the FBI issued a cyber alert in January 2026 to warn of the use of QR codes in campaigns by the North Korea-aligned APT group Kimsuki. ESET detects phishing emails via its ESET email scanner designed to identify QR codes in the vast majority of file types and to decode the URLs in them. The extracted URLs are scanned using ESET anti-phishing, anti-malware, and anti-spam engines. Any harmful URLs are blocked and the associated emails flagged or deleted. In H1 2026, approximately 11% of all detected phishing emails utilized QR codes. On average, we saw 100,000 such detections monthly in H1 2026, with the highest detection levels recorded in April. Geographically, the highest prevalency was in the US, 90% of detections, Spain was 17%, and Mexico was 6%. How to avoid malicious QR codes? Use a multi-layered security solution capable of detecting malicious QR codes in emails, including an Android mobile device. Stop and think before you scan. If there are any red flags in the email messages that raise suspicion, inspect the displayed link. If the message comes from a known sender, but you still have doubts, verify the legitimacy of the message with the displayed sender via other channels such as chat or by phone. For additional details on the mentioned topics, head to We Live Security Threat Report section and download a copy of the latest threat report. We've even given you a QR code to scan. And just to top it off, there's another couple of QR codes for you and a thank you from me. For more cybersecurity and research content, follow us on X, Twitter, Mastodon, or Blue Sky, and read our blog posts and pages on welivesecurity.com. Thank you very much for attending today. Like I said, if you require a copy of this, then please, by all means, send me an email and we can get that sent out to you, either for you to rewatch or to send to a colleague to watch for them.